my horror night.
Welcome to the Last Video Store. I'm your host, Bud Haddonfield, and today is an episode I've been thinking about for a while. I would like to incorporate every horror movie that either focuses on a musical setting, it's about a rock band, or we have real life musicians in the movies, or the movie references the real life musicians and somewhat. There's a lot of movies. I've been thinking about this, like I said, for a while, just so I can incorporate as many as possible. And of course, I'm going to miss a couple of them, but I think this is going to be a fun episode. So we're going to get things started out at the very beginning, and it is Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera. This movie is from the silent era, 1925, I believe. Everybody knows what Phantom of the Opera is, and it has many different incarnations, which we're going to talk about on this list because I own a few copies of it. But Phantom of the Opera, Lon Chaney, he is a deformed character lurking in the back of this opera house, killing off characters and whatnot. It doesn't get as straightforward as that. So, the original Phantom of the Opera, and we're going to jump ahead a few decades to, well, I say that about 10, 15 years later, and is going to be the actual Universal version of Phantom of the Opera. I don't know what year this one came out offhand. I believe it was the early 40s. And this was, like I said, the actual Universal Phantom of the Opera. Claude Rains, who was the Invisible Man, was in this one. He was also in The Wolfman. A lot of the Universal movies had the same actors back and forth and whatnot, but this one was actually really good as well. I personally choose this one over the Lon Chaney Jr. version just because it's kind of hard to follow with a silent film. So it's not that it's bad, it's just it takes a lot of mental concentration, which I'm not always in the mood for. So, a few years later, we have Hammer Horrors, Phantom of the Opera, and Hammer pretty much, I'm not going to say they remade all the Universal monster movies. They did adaptations of it, like they hit things like Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Phantom of the Opera, but there's other ones that they didn't touch. They did have a werewolf. But this one, I believe, came out in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 1962, was directed by Terence Fisher, who did a lot of the Hammer horror movies. And this one was a lot of fun as well. And the good thing about all these movies, I'm talking mostly Phantom of the Opera, is that when they had the other movies, like even from the silent era to the Universal to the Hammer, they didn't try to redo one of the others. Each of them have their own individual looks, which is actually pretty cool. So moving ahead to the 80s, we had Robert Englund as Phantom of the Opera. This one's a different story because it has some time traveling in it and whatnot. But this isn't a bad movie. Robert Englund was trying to jump away from the Freddy character at this point. He was like, man, I can play a bunch of different characters. Because roughly around the same time, he did a movie with Tobe Hooper. I can't think of the name of it right now. But he played something like the Marquis de Sade. It's at the tip of my tongue, but it's not important at this point. But he did this movie. This one was in 1989. I'm sure that Tobe Hooper movie is going to jump and hit me when I'm talking about something else. But yeah, move it along. All right, we have Dario Argento's version of Phantom of the Opera. This one had the late Julian Sands. This one came out 1998, so 9 years from the Robert Englund one. This one wasn't bad either. I love all of Dario Argento's movies, and Julian Sands is always a good time as your leading character. I'm not going to be talking about Phantom of the Mall because it has a musical atmosphere with all that the late 80s and whatnot, but it doesn't take place in musical settings. Which there's a piano player who gets his dick bit by a cobra, but splitting hairs. Okay, I count this as a horror adjacent movie. It is the Gerard Butler version of Phantom of the Opera, directed by Joe Schumacher. This one was 2004, I believe it was. This one wasn't too bad. I know a lot of people gave it shit. It followed the Andrew Lloyd Webber play, but I always like Joe Schumacher movies. Uh, People did die in it, so that one. So another Dario Argento movie is Opera. This one came out, I believe, in 1990, and it was a slasher movie about people getting killed off in an opera house. They're gonna have other movies like this on this list, but this one was a cool one. It had a very cool segment, if you haven't seen it, where the killer is killing this guy and he forces this girl to watch. Now the way he does it is he tapes some tape with some needles like right underneath her eyes, and if she was to close her eyes she gets pricked by the needles, and you can see it right here. This one was a very cool one. I don't want to give away all the details if you haven't seen it. It's a cool movie to watch for the first time. So continuing with Opera, we have an older one called The Monster of the Opera, which is supposed to be somewhat of a sequel to The Vampire and the Ballerina. This one came out in 1964, so it's not too old, but it's older than the 80s and 90s, what I've been talking about. This one isn't too bad. It's a cool little vampire movie, but it takes place at the opera, so we got to count it. Moving along, these movies are all in no particular order. It's literally, let's see if I can show you. I don't want to make you sick like the Blues. I'm sorry. Where's the map? All right. Let's get back on track here. So the next movie is going to be Queen of the Damned. This one's kind of a twofer because you have the late Aaliyah in this movie playing the Queen of the Damned, and then you also have the main character who was a part of a band, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen this movie maybe once or twice, and it wasn't too bad. But that early 2000s charm. So Queen of the Damned. We have a movie from the 70s, which is a really great Pete Walker movie called The Comeback. This is about a music composer played by Jack Jones, who did the theme from The Love Boat, and he's back to composing, and shit's just starting to happen. This is a really cool movie that not a lot of people talk about. I believe you can still find this on the standalone copy. If not, it's in the Pete Walker box set. I can't tell you if it's volume 1 or volume 2, but it's definitely worth giving it a shot. So The Comeback. We have Uncle Peckerhead, and yes, that is the name of the movie. So this band right here, they want to hit the road, and they find this roadie to drive the van, because they need the van, because you can't have a band and go on tour without a van. And the roadie is a demon by night. So that's not the worst movie out there. Moving along. We have I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which starred Brandy. We have Studio 666, which is the actual Foo Fighters, and they're playing themselves, and they want to start writing music, and they rent this house, and the house is haunted, and Dave Grohl gets possessed. And I actually really like this movie, so if you haven't seen this one, I recommend it. Okay, this one right here, Motel Hell. It has a small segment where a band in a van, and one of the band members, played by John Ratzenberger, he played Cliff on Cheers, and he did Ham in the Toy Story movies. But they crashed the band, and they crashed the van, and they meet the former Vincent and Ida. So Motel Hell. So we get Rocky Horror Picture Show. That's kind of explanatory by itself. It's a musical from the 70s, 1975, if I'm not mistaken. It's not important, but yeah, 1975, and it also has Meatloaf, who ended up becoming a rock and roll star of his own. We have The Hunger, which is a little vampire movie that stars David Bowie. We have The Bride, which is a Frankenstein-esque story, and it stars Sting, not the wrestler, the singer, Sting from The Police. We have Stage Fright, which this is a little cool movie too that doesn't always get talked about. It's about these actors on a stage. They're doing like this musical and whatnot, and this killer escapes from a prison or a mental asylum, and he locks himself in with all these actors, and he starts killing them off grotesque one by one. And I think the other name of this title was Aquarius. But this one was a really cool movie. If you haven't seen this one, I definitely recommend it. It came out in the mid to late 80s. Doesn't say on the back, but I think I'm right. But I definitely dug this one. This one's cool. Stage Fright. Now, I don't think this is a remake, but this is another movie also called Stage Fright. And it has a different take to it. It's a slasher movie, which the other one was a slasher as well. And it was a musical. And it's about this little girl and little boy. Their mama's a mini driver, and she's dating Meatloaf, and she gets killed by this dude. She was a singer in the opera. And years later, Meatloaf opens up this little musical summer camp, and the girl, who is blossoming to be her own, kind of like her mother, starts singing, and there's this killer that's going around killing people, and it's a cool little movie if you haven't seen this one. So I also recommend this one as well. All right, so we got Deep Blue Sea that has LL Cool J. Always liked LL Cool J. Also Halloween H2O that also had LL Cool J. And we had Halloween Resurrection that had Busta Rhymes. We had Leprechaun in the Hood, which is about three inspiring rappers stealing Ice-T's Magical Flute and Gold to get their start in the music business, so musical setting. Continuing, we got Bones with Snoop Dogg, this fucking glare. We have Snoop Dogg's Hood of Horror, which isn't that bad. We have Vicious Lips, which this was an Empire Picture Movies. Empire Picture was the company that eventually became Full Moon Features with Charles Band, but this was about an all-female rock band who is in space. It's not bad. It's pretty cool. It's the same thing you get from all of these movies like Ghoulies and whatnot. So this one's definitely entertaining. I like it. We got the brand new box set of Trick or Treat from Synapse Films. I absolutely love this movie. I've talked about this in a few videos. I did its own video episode on its own, and we have Gene Simmons, we have Ozzy Osbourne, and we have a kid, Eddie Weinbauer, who's in love with rock and roll and metal, and his favorite singer, Sammy Kerr, who's a who's a musician, and he dies, and he comes back through playing his records, and it's self-explanatory. We have a little movie called Ambition. I did not finish this movie. It's just because at the time, it was just like, it was on, and I was doing some other shit, and Bob Shaye directed this movie. Lynn Shaye's in it. And Ambition, It Can Kill You. So, check it out. We have Hard Rock Nightmare. Yeah, Hard Rock Nightmare, which is about a rock band. One of the band members has family property, and he'd killed his grandpa several years before because he thought his grandpa was, I think, a vampire. The grandpa was fucking with him and whatnot, so he got his due. And he wants to go have a band practice on some family property that he owns that he's about to inherit, and there is a werewolf going around killing off all the band members one by one. This one's a really cool movie. It's currently streaming on Shudder, I think so check that one out. We have Slumber Party Massacre Part 2, where the killer goes around with a drill and a guitar, and he sings, and it's a very odd occurrence, but it fits the motif. So getting back to the last Christmas episode I did, we have Anna and the Apocalypse, which is just a musical that takes place in a zombie apocalypse in London. That's a cool little Christmas movie. We have Rockabilly Vampire, Burning Love. We have the always fun Rockula, yes, a rock and roll vampire who's a virgin. Tony Basil's in this too, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. The only way I own this movie is in this box set right here, and it's Green Room. If you haven't seen it, it's about like this somewhat punk band. They trying to make some money. They play a gig, and it ends up being at like a Nazi club or something, and somebody gets killed, and the band members get taken hostage, but they fight back, and you got Patrick Stewart and fuck Nazis. But this is a pretty good movie. All right, this is one of my favorite movies. I just pre-ordered it on the Blu-ray, but it is Cannibal the Musical. This is a trauma film from the 90s. Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who went on to do South Park. This was their first project they did outside of film school. It's about the story of Alfred Packer. And it's not much of a horror movie, but it kind of, well, it's horror adjacent, I guess. But it's a trauma movie, it's a musical, and I love it. Excuse me. So next movie is also one of mine that I love so much, and it is Hard Rock Zombies, and it also has Nazis, so fuck you again, Nazis. Self-explanatory. Hard Rock Zombies, they kill Nazis. Rocktober Blood, which we're supposed to be getting a Blu-ray release of this from TerraVision, I think is the company. This is a little burn-on-demand disc. It's kind of a shitty transfer, but this is the only way to get it and watch it as is. So Rocktober Blood. We have Shock 'em Dead, which isn't a bad movie. It's cheesy. It's from the early 90s. We have Tracy Lords. The acting's pretty bad, but it's a fun little movie. Let's see, it's another copy of Trick or Treat. We have Slaughterhouse Rock, which also stars Tony Basil. Check this one out. This was kind of hard to explain, and it's a little hard to get through. But it's not the worst movie in the world. I believe it takes place on Alcatraz. But Slaughterhouse Rock. Vinegar Syndrome had put this on a 2-pack with Hard Rock Zombies. So, this movie, we're supposed to be getting a sequel to it, and it is Deathgasm. I absolutely love this fucking movie. It's cool, man. Demons, rock band, metal, boobies, bosoms. Deathgasm. Oh, we got Black Roses, which is another little fun movie right here. I really dug this one. We have Rock and Roll Nightmare, which is John McElthor. I don't know if I fucked that name up. He and his band goes to this farmhouse that's the devil's pretty much hanging out at. Him and his demons starts killing off all of his bandmates one by one. We have Slash, which is a movie I've talked about in one of the episodes prior. It's about a rock band. One of their members, his aunt dies, so he goes back to his family farm. And the guy's grandpa, who's supposedly dead because he killed a bunch of people, and he was killed in the fire that the main singer started by accident when he was a kid. And this is actually a pretty fun little early 2000s movie. So if you could find yourself this one, I believe it's on Amazon Prime. Either streaming or buying, but it was pretty cheap. I think the DVD's still in print, so maybe one day we'll get a Blu-ray of it. So Slash. We have Devil Music, which I have not seen yet. It's on my list. We have Bubba Hotep, which is a Don Coscarelli classic, starred Bruce Campbell, who's supposed to be Elvis, so that's why this movie's here. We have Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, which was my least favorite one, if I'm not mistaken. Not counting the fucking remake, because that one was a piece of shit. But Alice Cooper is in this one, along with Suck, which was a pretty cool little vampire movie about a band, and they're trying to get successful, and they end up turning into vampires, and they get successful. And they have a whole lot of people. Iggy Pop's on here, Malcolm McDowell, Moby, fucking Moby. And we get Alice Cooper as well. And Prince of Darkness, that also has Alice Cooper. So he's always a good time. We got Monster Dog, starring Alice Cooper. And he plays a version of, well, a somewhat version of himself. He's a singer. He goes back to some family property, and his family was plagued with werewolves back in the day. This is a newer movie, Destroy All Neighbors. It's Alex Winter's return to horror. I say previously. Alex Winters was half of Bill and Ted. He was also Marco in The Lost Boys. He was in Freaked, which we need a Blu-ray copy of that. And he comes back in this one, and it's about like some, I don't know what the hell this is. This dude's driven, and he starts killing people on accident, and the people he kills come back and talks to him, and it's a whole thing. But speaking of which, 1 second, because I forgot something. All right, back from technical difficulties. Forgot this movie off the list, American Werewolf in London. And the reason why the star of this movie, David Naughton, put out a disco song. It was either in the late 70s, early 80s. It was featured in Detroit Rock City. Go watch the music video of him singing it. It is it's a trip. So, American Werewolf in London. All right, so this movie right here, this was Brian De Palma's, one of his first films. This came out or was made before Rocky Horror Picture Show, and it is a musical movie from the 70s. It's somewhat of an adaptation of Phantom of the Opera. We have this one cat. He's a songwriter and composer, and he goes to give his music to this big wig with I can't think of the damn name of the guy. Anyway, dude's face ends up getting burned. He puts on a mask and he goes around starting to kill people who sings his music because he wants Jessica Harper's character. But yeah, Phantom of the Paradise. I definitely recommend this movie. This is a fun movie that not a lot of people talk about. You have Paul Williams, who was a singer, songwriter all throughout the 60s and 70s. He played Little Enos in the Smokey and the Bandit movies. We have William Finley, who he did some work with Tobe Hooper. He was in Eaten Alive, and he was in that other fucking movie that I can't think of, but it's pissing me off, and it's the other one with Robert Englund and fucking Night Terrors. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. But yeah, when I was talking about how Robert Englund was trying to break out playing some different characters, he was in Night Terrors with Tobe Hooper that also starred William Finley. Phantom of the Paradise. Alright, so we have Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. That stars Deborah Harry. Deborah Harry was in Blondie, and she was also in Videodrome. We have some Dee Snider-ness, because Dee Snider's fucking awesome. He had made his own little movie in the late 90s called Strange Land, and I can't recommend this movie enough, but he lent his voice to a talking head in this movie, Here for Blood. This one was actually pretty cool too, so check out both of these. So we're down to 2 movies left. We have Cradle of Fear, little band. They had made a movie called Cradle of Fear, and the lead singer, Danny Filth, is the star of this movie. It's like an anthology horror movie about a serial killer, and the serial killer kills kids and whatnot. So the last movie on the list is Pagani Horror, and I've seen it before, can't remember much about it. Donald Pleasance is in it. It's kind of hard to follow, but it's not the worst movie out there, so. Alright, that's a bunch of movies right there. Long-winded, tired of talking about it. So, check all these movies out. We're getting closer and closer to Thanksgiving, so we're going to have some more episodes to come. Please like and subscribe. If there's anything you want me to cover, just let me know. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.
Michael Myers are the heroes of my past. Now the media is dying. Chucky and the zombies now all up in cemetery. So bring me back those. I wanna come back to those times when all so scary.